You might not know it, but your next cruise just got more expensive. Well, maybe. And the increase didn't come from the fare. At least 4 different cruise lines raised their fees in the last few weeks, and one of them slipped in a second increase that you can't opt out of and probably haven't even heard about yet. Plus, a case that has haunted the cruise community since November finally has an answer, and someone didn't make it home. Hi, I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship. $23 a night. That's what MSC cruisers will charge yacht club guests in gratuities on Caribbean and Alaskan sailings starting May 11th, and that is up from $20. That's a 15% increase on the tier that you chose because the extras were supposed to be handled. On a 7-night sailing for 2, that's roughly $42 more than you budgeted, roughly the cost of a specialty dinner that you didn't plan on buying. Standard cabins are going up $1 as well, from $16 to $17. So that one's a little more painful because usually people that are buying yacht club aren't going to mind these extra costs as much because yacht club is pretty pricey. And this is not uncommon. This tracks with the rest of the industry. But the yacht club number is the one that really does sting, even though if you can afford it, because you're already paying premium prices and you're still watching these fees just continue to climb. And that is when the value math starts to change. And the timing makes it even worse. MSC Poisia launches the line's first ever Alaskan season from Seattle on May 11th, the exact day the new pricing kicks in. So if you booked one of these inaugural sailings, your gratuity rate changed before you even step foot on the gangway. MSC does say that if you prepay before May 11th, you lock in the old rate. So I do appreciate whenever cruise lines are nickel and diming us cruisers to death, at least when they give us a little heads up and they grandfather us in and honor that lower rate. Now that window is still open, but it won't be for long. So if you have an MSC cruise booked, this is one to keep your eye on. Now that's one line finding a way to charge more without touching the cruise fare. This next one did it twice. And most people only know about half of it. Holland America Line, this is a cruise line a lot of people don't think about. It's the older people cruise line. I actually love Holland America Line. I think it's great, but I don't like all of these increases. Holland America is raising its daily crew appreciation fare by $1 on June 1st from $17 to $18 for standard cabins and from $19 to $20 for suites. Now that part is not surprising. Again, we're seeing these increases everywhere. But here's what is a little surprising. Booked guests and multiple cruise outlets are reporting that Holland America is also raising its onboard service charge from 18% to 20%. And we're starting to see this a lot in the cruise line that's traditionally been 18%. That charge hits every drink you order, even soft drinks, every specialty restaurant cover charge, every spa treatment, every salon visit. And unlike the daily gratuity, which you can have removed, I don't like it. I try not to judge people who have gratuities removed. You do you, but okay, I'm kind of judging you. But the service charge cannot be removed. This is a separate line item that guests typically don't have the ability to change. It's built into the price of everything you buy on board. So for someone who buys the drink package, they book a couple of spa appointments, and they eat at a specialty restaurant once or twice during a week-long cruise, that 2% compounds across every single transaction. So while 2% might not seem like a lot on the face of it, when you amplify that across multiple purchases, that starts to feel pretty meaningful. Carnival and Princess have already made this move from 18 to 20% for service charges. So this is becoming the new standard across the Carnival Corporation family. If you're sailing Holland America after June 1st, prepaying your gratuities, like with MSC, that will lock in the current daily rate. The service charge increase, though, there's no way to prepay your way around that one. You're stuck with it. So I want to know, have you started factoring in gratuity increases when you compare cruise prices, or is that base fare still how you shop? I do think it's really important that people understand cruise math and that everything is not all-inclusive truly on a cruise. And as these nickel and diming things continue to escalate, you've really got to build those into your budget. Otherwise, you're going to end up spending way more than you ever thought you were going to. Now, you would think the cruise lines that sell themselves as the more affordable options, like MSC, would be the last to push fees higher, especially since another budget cruise line, Carnival, already raised its gratuities earlier from $16 to $17 for standard cabins and $18 to $19 for suites. And this might surprise you, but one of the cruise lines of them all with the highest gratuities already before this increase was MSC. So this one really, you're going to feel it. If you've sailed Carnival since early April and you didn't prepay, well, that's already on your bill. But here's the number I keep coming back to. Margaritaville at Sea, traditionally the budget cruise line, we're talking value prices, they set its daily gratuity for $22 per person for standard cabins back in February and $25 for suites. So on a 7-night cruise, that's $154 per person just in gratuities in a standard cabin on a cruise line that markets itself as affordable. Carnival's 7-night total is $119. MSC's is also $119. And that is a $35 per person gap, $70 for a couple. I love doing cruise math. And you haven't even ordered that drink yet with that now 20% service charge, at least with most cruise lines. So think about that for a second. You could book what you think is a budget cruise, and the gratuities alone cost more than they would on Royal Caribbean. So I do think when you're comparing prices, you are balling on a budget, you're trying to find a budget cruise, you've got to do this math. Because I like MSC. I've heard actually mixed things about Margaritaville of the Seas. I know they've come a long way. But before you book that budget cruise, do the math, including things like gratuities, because you might find a better or higher level cruise option, like on Royal Caribbean, for example, compared to MSC. And I like MSC, but Royal Caribbean is better, at least in my opinion, for not much more once you account for that gratuity difference. Now, here's what's actually happening. 4 cruise lines raised their fees within just a few weeks of each other, and none of them even touched the base fare. Now, that's not a coincidence, that's by design. Why? Because of course, that fare is the number that you see when you do your search. So you see a cruise fare, you're like, oh my God, that's a great deal. And if cruise lines touch that, that's when you start to compare and shop somewhere else. But if they keep sneaking in these fee increases on these ancillary products, most cruisers aren't even aware of that. They're gonna book the value fare and they're going to be caught unaware later. So before you book your next cruise, it's really important to take that daily gratuity, keeping in mind all of these increases that are hitting simultaneously, multiply by nights and guests, then check whether your cruise line has also increased service charges, so you've got to account for that. Some still are 18%, but many are now moving to 20%. You have to build that into your comparison. The fare, that's just the advertisement to hook you in. The total is the price. So always be vigilant, cruisers, because these cruise lines, they're going to play us dirty. They're going to sneak in every nickel and dime increase they possibly can, and we're not going to fall for it. I'm including this next story because it's one that the community has been following since November. It's terribly tragic. It's one of the most tragic cases in cruise world. And this week brought the news that many people were suspecting but dreading. Anna Kepner was 18 years old from Titusville, Florida, a high school senior, an athlete, someone her family described as the kind of person who just lit up every room she walked into. She was tragically found dead in her cabin aboard Carnival Horizon during a family cruise last fall. Now, for months, the investigation was largely silent. We haven't heard much because we're talking about minors that are involved here. However, this week, we did get the formal answer. Her minor stepbrother, who's 16 years old, well, he has been indicted on federal charges of murder and aggravated sexual abuse. He will be tried as an adult. Both charges carry a maximum sentence of life in prison. The indictment was originally filed under seal earlier this year, and again, because he's a minor, we've not heard much about it at all. So now that he's being tried as an adult, we're now hearing more about it. The indictment, however, was transferred to adult prosecution and therefore unsealed this week. The medical examiner had ruled Anna's death a homicide caused by mechanical asphyxiation. Now, the stepbrother, identified only as TH in court documents, has been released, which a lot of people are upset about, to a guardian's custody while he is awaiting trial. Anna's father has spoken publicly about his own anger about the accused not being behind bars, calling him a danger. Now, as far as Carnival's role, they said that they're grateful to the FBI and they will continue to keep Anna in their thoughts. This is a devastating case and there's just really no comfortable way to talk about it. But it happened on a cruise ship during a family vacation in a cabin shared with minors. So if you've been following Anna's story, well, now you know where it stands. A couple of other things happened in the last 2 weeks that are worth talking about, and the first one is a little hard to hear. A crew member aboard Norwegian Viva went overboard on April 9th while the ship was sailing away from Costa Maya, Mexico. Passengers described the ship making a sudden sharp turn during dinner as the crew launched into their emergency procedures. A coordinated search involving the Mexican Rescue Coordination Center and nearby vessels lasted 2 days before it was suspended. Now, tragically, the crew member was not recovered and the family has been notified. Someone went to work on a cruise ship and never came home, and that's just really sad. On a different Norwegian ship, a different kind of problem, Norwegian Dawn was inspected by the CDC on March 29th in Tampa and scored an 84. Well, that's a problem because a score of 85 or below is considered a failure. Inspectors found improperly cooled food, contaminated equipment, and cleanliness issues. The crew did fix a number of things on the spot, which is common and a good sign, but here's the part that matters for anyone who's booked on this ship. Norwegian Dawn has since left the US to reposition in Europe for the summer, and because it's now in its European season, the CDC will not be re-inspecting it the way that it would if it were at a US departure or home port. This is the first cruise ship to fail an inspection since July 2025. So if you have a Mediterranean booking on Norwegian Dawn, it doesn't mean cancel, but it does mean paying a little attention to the basics when you board. How is food being handled at the buffet? Whether the common areas look clean? Always being diligent in washing your hands. It doesn't matter what ship you're on, you should always do that. And consider whether the issues that were flagged feel like they have been addressed. That's something you can actually check with your own eyes, at least some of the time. Holland America just gave its loyal fans something to look forward to. Yeah, they're nickel and diming people, but they do also have some good positive news for cruisers. The line announced a $500 million refurbishment program called Holland America Evolution. It covers 6 ships, more than half of the fleet. I'm excited to hear this because I will actually be sailing Westerdam, which I've sailed before, and it is a little bit of a tired ship. I will be sailing it to Japan in the fall, and I hope it's part of this refresh. The plan is to bring features from the newer Pinnacle class ships to the older vessels, including, and this one's super exciting, the Grand Dutch Cafe. I love the Grand Dutch Cafe. I hate that it's only now currently on a few of the Pinnacle class Holland ships, so seeing this roll out is really, really exciting. And here's something that's been a long time coming. Solo balcony cabins. Holland America has never offered a dedicated solo cabin with a balcony before, and for a line that attracts a lot of solo cruisers, that's a bigger deal than it might sound. Oosterdam, which I recently sailed, does go first, relaunching in fall of 2027, with bookings opening May 6th. So if you've stuck with Holland America because you like those mid-sized, quieter ships, you like the cooler itineraries they sail, that's my favorite part about Holland, this is a line betting that you're right and they're investing accordingly. And as someone who really likes Holland America line, I'm so excited to hear this. Now, in less exciting news, Norwegian Cruise Line, they've had a rough couple of weeks. They've actually had a rough couple of months. They've had a lot of corporate turmoil. Now, as I mentioned, Norwegian Dawn failed CDC inspection, but they're also having some other issues. According to industry reporting, the company has been cutting up to 20% of its shoreside workforce. The cuts appear to be hitting areas including direct sales, guest services, marketing, IT, and security. So these are the teams that handle your reservation. They process your complaint if something goes sideways, and they keep the app running when you're trying to check in. Now, Norwegian says the changes won't affect onboard service or itineraries. The crew overboard, though, the CDC failure, all of their corporate turnover, including at the C-suite level, and all these layoffs now, these are separate things that have happened to land in the same window. So I hope this does not foretell trouble at sea for Norwegian Cruise Line. But if you're sailing Norwegian this year and the service feels different, then the layoffs are probably why.